Hi, it's Nicole. Thank you for all your comments on my uni vlog, and thank you for all the kind messages and for sharing my joy and excitement. I got my unconditional offer from Durham University on the 1st of August, and since then my reading plan has completely gone out of the window. So I don't see myself doing monthly wrap-up videos for the foreseeable future, but a lot of you showed interest in my reading lists and in joining me for the journey. So here are all the books I read to prepare for uni so far, especially for the seminar 1 of both modules. By the way, Donald pointed out that module, the word, doesn't make much sense, maybe to some of you guys in the US. Apologies. I think it's the same as subject or course or class, according to Google at least. And if there's anything else that's too British or doesn't make sense, please let me know. I mentioned the 2 modules that I chose in the vlog. Just in case you missed that or I wasn't very clear. First one is called Narrative Transformations. It explores the forms and practices of fiction from classical period through Middle Ages to Renaissance. There are 2 main subject matters that will run through our reading and study. The matter of Troy, which is the stories of Trojan War, and the matter of Britain, which is the Arthurian myth and legends. We'll study how this evolved through the 3 periods over 10 seminars. Second one is called Creative Nonfiction. It combines the study of nonfiction prose with workshop-based creative practice. I thought narrative transformations would be harder because I'm not familiar with the subject. I know nothing about medieval literature, for example, but after the first seminars, I realized creative nonfiction was more challenging because no matter how unfamiliar the subjects are, I can read and think about the plots and characters. After all, there's no fundamental difference between reading Homer and reading Dickens. It's a story and I'm a reader. But I'm not a writer. 10 minutes into the creative nonfiction seminar, the instructor asked us to write about a person or a place that was foundational in our life. I don't know what I was expecting because it does say it's workshop based, but I was in a bit of a shock. I had never tried writing with a stopwatch before. It was such pressure. And to those who were brave enough to read their piece out in front of everyone, he gave feedback immediately. That's when I realized, first of all, that mine was not completely rubbish. 2, this class is going to make genius shine. Maybe that's why Durham's English studies rank number 3 in the UK, even before Cambridge. And 3, everyone has wonderful stories to tell. We're all different, so there is no need to compare. And those thoughts made me very glad all over again that I'm doing this degree. However, after all that, I'm not comparing and competing nonsense. Of course, I want to get better. So one thing I started doing since that stressful but thrilling morning is to write morning pages and hope it help when I next have to write on the spot and read to be critiqued. I really like the combination of these 2 modules. Narrative Transformations asks me to read, Creative Nonfiction asks me to write, and the first one lives in history. The books on the reading list are old. The second one lives in the present. The books on the reading list are mostly from the 21st century or 20th century. A lot of them newly published books. So on to the reading list and the books themselves. The topic of Narrative Transformations Seminar 1 is classical epic, and the primary texts are the Odyssey by Homer and the Aeneid by Virgil. The Iliad and Metamorphoses are also on the initial reading list that was sent to us before the term started, but in the end we only discussed the Odyssey and the Aeneid in the seminar. Because these are originally in Greek and Latin, the reading list gives specific translations. If you ever wondered which to choose, here's what Durham recommends. He says, any of the editions recommended below is acceptable. Particularly useful editions are marked with a star. The star falls on Robert Fagel's translation for every single one. So for Homer, the Odyssey, it lists E.V. Real 1946 by Penguin, Water Shearing 1980, Oxford World Classics, Robert Fagel's Penguin 1996. For Virgil, the Aeneid, David West, Penguin 1990, Robert Fagel's Penguin 2010, Frederick Owl, Oxford World Classics 2008, John Dryden 1700, translated in 1700. Penguin published this one in 1997. I'll give you the recommended translations for the Iliad and Metamorphoses too. So E.V. Real 1950 Penguin 2003, which is the one I already own and read. Robert Fitzgerald 1974 Oxford World Classics. A more recent one by Anthony Verity, Oxford World Classics 2012. And then again Robert Fagel's Penguin 1990. I was slightly sad that my 2020 Emily Wilson edition is not acceptable, but I love this edition translated by Robert Fagel's. They are beautiful. The paper stock is thick and creamy. The quirk is this fluffy edge. I'm not sure if it's trying to look like an old manuscript. The sheets stick together more than the normal neatly trimmed edge because my finger can't feel the sharp edge of the next page. You have to do it from the kind of from the top. It took a while to get used to. I also love how pretty they stand together, though I wish the Odyssey were blue and the Iliad were red. For Ovid, Metamorphoses, my brand new 2023 translation by Stephanie McCarter is not accepted either. So David Rayburn, Penguin 2004, Alan Mandelbaum, Harcourt Brace 1993, haven't heard of this publisher before, Arthur Golding, Penguin 2002. Attention, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Renaissance translation called Shakespeare's Ovid. So of course I bought it. And lastly, Ted Hughes, Tales from Ovid, Faber 1997. This is a selection of 24 tales. I'm glad to report I managed to read both before the first seminar, the Aeneid for the first time, Odyssey for the second time. One thing you can't avoid when doing an English degree is that you get told what to read, no matter how unfamiliar or intimidating the title is, and no matter how long you've been aware of it and been trying to avoid it. You have no choice but to get on. One of my hesitations about becoming an English student is that I thought I didn't like being told what to read. And one of the first things I had to read was Virgil, for whom I have an unreasonable fear. I think he has a scary name. But I managed. I took a clip straight after the first seminar, so here's my immediate response about all sorts of things. Hello, I just came out of my first seminar of the Narrative Transformations module. I survived. I'm so pleased. So we met our tutor, how do you call them? The seminar instructor, the seminar leader. I met my group, and we talked about the Odyssey and the Aeneid, and I understood most of the things people were talking about. I was really pleased because I had no idea, and I was even able to say something oral. I just want to check in with you and tell you how I did, just in case you're interested. We have to do a little presentation, about 5 minutes. So each seminar throughout the term will be focusing on a different subject, and each seminar will start with a small presentation by 1 or 2 students. So we had to pick the seminar we want to do the presentation on today, and I picked Shakespeare's Troilus and Cressida, and that's one of the last ones, so I'm really happy I got that one. You had to kind of compete. So I'll be preparing for that, and we also have to write 2 essays. The first about 2,000 words. I think my soup is coming, 1 sec. I'm just having lunch in the Gala Theatre Cafe. My soup just arrived. It's the tomato and pepper soup with white rolls, just in case you're interested to know. Where was I? Presentation. Oh yes, essays. So we need to write 2 essays. One about 2,000 words, one about 3,000 words. I need to find out if it's about or max or minimum. I need to find out. And we need to cover 2 periods over these two essays. So we have the choice of ancient classics, medieval, and Renaissance. And I think for now, I'm interested in writing the first one, probably on the classics, so either Homer or Virgil, because I really like them, to my surprise. And the second one, I am definitely going to write something about Shakespeare. So it's good that I have a kind of clear-ish idea what I want to do, but I'm open for changing my mind because I know very little about medieval subjects, and the majority of this module is on medieval stuff, so I'm open to change my mind. I used my it was a very funny seminar room. It's a long, kind of narrow room with no desks, so we all have to just balance our laptops and iPad and books and notebooks and everything on our laps, which is a bit challenging. I used the old-fashioned method. I just used a little notebook and wrote things down, and I wasn't even trying to type everything the instructor said. Kind of just note down some key ideas that would be useful. For example, the definition of romance, I searched it on the internet because I have nowhere else to go. I had no idea. The definition of romance. So that's one thing I need to dig more into. But yeah, generally speaking, it was great. I learned a lot and a lot more to read and think, especially if I'm going to write one of the essays on this period. So yeah, very happy in general. My first seminar done. Can you believe it? There's only 10. So I'm going to have my soup and talk to you later. On top of the primary text, I've been enjoying doing my own research into secondary reading. For narrative transformations, the secondary reading so far is not set. This is where the fun comes in. For example, we were asked to consider the genre of epic. My understanding was only that it's long and it's in verse and it sounds quite grand. So I wanted to find out more about epic. I consulted Wikipedia and read the intro of the Aeneid, where I found a small line that says, "The Homeric epics have no historical background to speak of, as C.S. Lewis puts it. Quote, There is no pretense, indeed no possibility of pretending, that the world, or even Greece, would have been much altered if Odysseus had never got home at all. Preface, page 26. The light bulb in my head at that moment was not what C.S. Lewis wrote about the Aeneid, but that he wrote about the Aeneid. But which preface is this? After some digging, it became clear that this is a preface to Paradise Lost. I wasn't prepared to read the preface to Paradise Lost when Paradise Lost is not in the curriculum. But to be able to properly appreciate Paradise Lost, C.S. Lewis argues that you need to know what an epic is. So he spends about 6 chapters talking about the definition and characteristics of epic, about Homeric epics as well as the later epics, which include Virgil's Aeneid. I now have an extensive knowledge of classical epic, which was not necessary in the seminar discussion, but I'm glad I looked into the mysterious working of the epics and have a basic understanding beyond the who and the what. If you are interested in classical epic, I highly recommend a preface to Paradise Lost. It demands all your brain power, but it's worth it. By the way, picking and choosing chapters from a book and this kind of purposeful reading cured me very quickly of my tendency to insist on reading a book from cover to cover. It's just impossible. The first 3 seminars of creative nonfiction is on memoir. The topic of seminar 1 is life writing, and the primary text is On Chapel Sands by Laura Cumming, published in 2019. It starts with a 3-year-old girl who was kidnapped on Chapel Sands and carries on like a detective story. The girl is the author's mother, Betty. The memoir is an investigation into Betty's myth-like past. Some of the events and secrets, like the knowledge of the kidnapping, is guarded so tightly that Betty herself had no idea for decades. It brings many figures from the previous generations into the picture, as well as unearth the truths that no one speaks of. I listened to the audio book that is narrated by the author herself. She has a beautiful voice with a lovely, soft Scottish accent, I think. I have a few people in mind whom I plan to give this as a Christmas present. I think my mother-in-law, for example, would love the portrait of people, community, and life in the early 20th century. To be honest, the reading list for this module is a bit confusing. I thought there was another title, which is a primary text, but it turns out not, and we didn't discuss it at all. There are also 2 different lists that exist in different places. I'm making use of both at the moment. So far, I read 2 chapters from the Handbook of Creative Writing edited by Stephen Earnshaw. It's a collection of essays by different authors. I read the 2 on creative nonfiction. One essay called Writing the Memoir compares and contrasts memoir and autobiography, memoir and fiction, memoir and personal essay. For someone who has no background in creative writing, I found them very helpful. I'll put the titles in the multiple reading lists on the screen for you to have a quick look. I'll talk about the titles in more detail if I go on reading any of them. If you are reading along, the subject for the next narrative transformation seminar is chivalric romance. Please read Mary de France and Chrétien de Troyes for seminar 2. These stories are easier than I expected and are definitely interesting. The lays of Mary de France are quite short, so those are a good place to dip your toes for medieval literature. For creative non-fiction, the focus is still memoir. The primary text is In the Dream House. Lastly, as much as I want to, I probably won't be able to produce a video every week while I'm trying to find my feet with uni, so apologies in advance. I'll do my best. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.